Hello?
Hey, what's good, mate?
Yeah, I'm chilling. How you doing, big man?
Pretty good. I
Hold on. Let me let
understand
me
the.
let me let me let me bring you down a little bit here. You're a little loud.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Oh, good. Oh, good. How's your night going?
Pretty good, man.
That's good to
Pretty
hear.
good. I understand you being dubious. It's a fucking shit show out here, so I feel you.
I'm just chilling. We vibing.
Yeah, straight up. But yeah, so like just a really quick point is that like, have you ever heard of anybody leaving, um, like let's say Cuba and saying like, oh shit, it was really bad there.
Yeah. One of my good friends from high school. Her parents were actually from Cuba, and she's 100% Cuban, and she lives in Canada. And her parents are vouchly against Cuba, and they
N-
fled away from it. So yeah, no, I do know a lot of people like that. Yeah. I know,
Now, do
I
you
know,
know
I know, I
anybody?
know, I know Ukrainians who fled, who had the ability to fled when the Nazis were controlling Ukraine. They fled.
Now how many people do you know that have like stayed in Cuba because they appreciated the government?
I imagine there would be, I imagine there would definitely be people, but I have not personally engaged with anyone in Cuba nor been to Cuba and talked to these people, so I wouldn't know. And I haven't looked at any content that reflect that. But more than likely, there would be people who would agree with the system. But I feel like the problem is you're getting caught up like, oh yeah, there's a few people that agree with it. But I mean, there's a few people that agree what Hitler did was right, right? So like, I
No, no,
don't.
no. I 100% agree. But also, it's like you want to say it's a few people. It's the same that I could say, right? Is that there's just a few people that flee Cuba. And then you would tell me, no, no, there's plenty of people that flee Cuba. And then I would say, yeah, yeah, there's plenty of people who support the Cuban Revolution. So the point I'm getting at is that anecdotally, it's tick for tat,
So
essentially.
it's Cuba. So why do so many individuals flee communist countries? We see it in Venezuela, we saw it in Cuba, we saw it in Russia, we see it in China. We see literally China going out and creating police stations to go and police their own people outside of their country that have fled or have said something negative about the government. So I feel like you're saying, okay, well, it's just Cuba, but the vast, it's a common pattern in communist
No,
states.
no, no,
I don't really see
100%.
that. I don't really see many people fleeing from like a free market or from a democracy to go live in China. Yeah,
Well, let
there
me
are
ask
a
you a
few who
question.
do
Are there
that.
people that leave Mexico to come to the United
Well,
States?
most definitely because there's more economic opportunity.
But Mexico isn't communist. You feel me? It's
No,
a
but
it's a
but
free
but
economic
yes,
state.
but now you're
So
but now
it
you're but now you're trying to compare people being able to move between countries and economic prosperity, because
no, no, no. All I'm saying is that you were saying you don't see people fleeing from free markets. When I'm saying no, no, they
I
do.
don't
I
see. Okay, let me
personally,
clarify. Let me clarify something here. I don't see people fleeing from a free market to a controlled market or closed market, where the fuck the term is. You don't really see many people going from a free market to like a communist fucking
do you
controlled
think
shit.
that do you think that like Canada is more of a controlled market than the United States?
Yes, we are, but we are still technically a free market. Yes, we might
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah, yeah.
regulation to make sure corporations can't go fucking insane, which I do believe a good free market has, because a open, completely free, oh, any corporation can do whatever the fuck they want doesn't work, because humans are inherently greedy and selfish. And that is also why communism doesn't work. Because in communism,
Well, let me ask you
when you get
that.
your people at the top who can't be voted out by the people, like they can't be voted out when they go
In
insane.
Cuba, they can vote. Yeah, in Cuba, they can vote.
They
In
can vote.
Venezuela, they can vote.
They can vote.
In Venezuela, they voted for
I
Chavez. Hello?
I'm just googling something. Okay, word.
Oh, okay, my bad. Yeah, like there's a like criminally under researched aspect of all these issues, which
Okay, hold on, hold
is
on,
there
hold on, hold
actually
on. I don't mean to
democracy in this
interrupt you. I just
process?
have to
No, no,
read.
you're good.
I have
You're
to
good.
read something
Good.
here. Han just said.
Yeah, please.
Um, yeah, sorry, and then we'll pick up right where you were leaving off.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
push the NATO borders to antagonize Putin. Putin invades in retaliation. Two asshole governments doing shitty things, but they don't care. They'll never be the ones on the front lines. Okay, well, NATO isn't necessarily. Yes, they have been expanding eastward, but in any treaties that they made, there was nothing about NATO actually expanding. It was about military expansion. There's been no military expansion until recently. And a lot of the time, when these countries join NATO, it's after invasions of Chechnya or Georgia. You're seeing these common patterns happen where these countries are like, well, I kind of want to join NATO, and then they get invaded, and so everyone else is like, well, fuck, maybe we should join NATO because then we just can't get invaded because they say, oh, they won't invade us, but then they invade us anyways because Russia has a fucking hard on for trying to restore the old Soviet Union borders, and that's what Putin has. Putin wants to bring back the Tsardom. I'm convinced of it. He wants his kid to be the next Tsar. Fuck. Yeah, but true. I guess we are free from propaganda. I can see it. I'm lucky to be free from propaganda in Russia. Most of my friends love Putin and hate US. Yeah, but propaganda works otherwise. They wouldn't do it. Don't need to convince everyone. Definitely works. I lost two of my friends from Ukraine and two from Russia just because of propaganda. That's fucking insane. Alrighty, you were saying elections, Cuba, go.
Oh yeah, the misconception that there's no democracy in these places like Vietnam, Venezuela, and Cuba, it's just blatantly false. And again, it's like, I'll give you an example. There was a such thing as the Red Scare, right?
Yep.
And we 100% would not allow any communist governments to exist, at least within the Western Hemisphere, right?
Yep. 100%. Yep.
So when people say, look at the failed states, right, without acknowledging that there is democracy, without acknowledging that a lot of it has to do with, if you dock in Cuba to do trade, you can't dock in the United States for something like 6 months, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So again, I'm not an apologist. I know that there was a lot of unnecessary death in a lot of revolutions: the American Revolution, the Soviet Revolution, the Cuban Revolution. I'm just saying that if we have a nuanced opinion about, whether or not capitalism is actually an evil system, I think that same nuance should be afforded to countries like Vietnam, like Venezuela, like Cuba. I don't know why they wouldn't just let Cuba fail on its own. And I don't know why Cuba, even though it's had a blockade against it for 60 years, for some reason is still kicking it. And it's because they do have the support of a huge portion of their population who, just like in China, like in the Soviet Union, were raised out of extreme poverty,
Yes,
And again, it's not making excuses for it.
Yeah,
it's just pointing out truths.
Yes, there are some countries that have gone beyond that, right? Have gone beyond, they didn't fully collapse. But you can also say, yes, Vietnam might not have failed. Yes, Cuba, even though it's been blockaded for this long, might not have failed. But you can also say the general quality of life of these countries couldn't be even comparable to a neighbor. So take a Thailand, right? Like Vietnam, it's pretty good there. It's okay. But Thailand, yeah, it has its poverty, but there are a lot more people who have a higher standard of living.
Well, the people who, yeah. So basic human, needs aren't met for a big portion of the population, but the people that it is met, they're very wealthy. So it's that wealth inequality that's being addressed by a lot of these countries. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to have to pay more in taxes. I don't want to have to pay my slave, quote unquote, a reasonable wage for working the land. I
feel that doesn't exist for many people. For many people, because human compassion is a pretty normal thing. I think people forget that human compassion is a normal thing, and most people want to help out their fellow man. But I do understand. No. Let me finish here, please. Okay. So when you have these people, right? Yes, every system you have your few characters that are greedy, and they do gain amass wealth or amass power. If it's a communist system, they get amass power. They know the right people. They get in the right places. They get in the right positions, and they are massive amounts of power. In capitalism, some people might gain a bunch of wealth, figure out a new way. Some might go to the extent of exploiting workers, but most of the time in first world countries where worker rights are a thing, this doesn't really exist that much. No, because look at America, bro. You don't have fucking motherfuckers in sweatshops. Oh, you have Amazon. Well, motherfucker, they still get paid pretty good. They can live a pretty good life. They have the natural amenities to everything. But when you come to countries where they're still developing, the same way when the United States was still developing, you did have that mass inequality, but it takes time to build the infrastructure. It takes time to build all these things, and it is important to push an incentive in your culture to be more caring for your to your general man, not to be greedy, and then the people who are greedy put in regulations to properly reprimand that and make sure it doesn't occur. And countries that do this right, so like if we look at like let's say the Scandinavian provinces, or we look at Germany, or like France, or I would even say Canada. Canada does it pretty well. America, a little bit more free market, but hey, they have their problems, but hey, they're still doing pretty good for themselves. Like we got motherfuckers trying to flex $300 shoes. If you can do that, hey, you're doing pretty good for yourself.
Yeah, but what is the point of someone flexing $300 shoes when you have 40% of Americans who are $200 away from being completely upside down? One hiccup, they're completely upside down. Meanwhile, you have people that are flexing $300 shoes. They don't have healthcare in the United States. You have to be privileged in order to have healthcare, right? Let me put it this way. You said that the United States had to do some questionable stuff at the beginning, right?
Yep.
So
Every country
the
has
difference is that
every country.
and that's my point, is that we afford some nuance, some leeway
Oh yeah, I agree.
to a country that literally utilized slave labor in order to build its wealth, to amass its wealth. It was off the back
But so did China.
of an no, exactly.
Yeah, like
That's literally my point.
okay,
That's
so
literally my point.
but the thing is though, your point is saying okay, yes, they did that. That means their system works.
No. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that, like, for example, with the United States, right? The United States utilized slavery essentially, right, in order to amass its wealth. And then once slavery was abolished, that exploitation did not magically disappear. There is a reason why shortly after slavery was kaput, there was this weird like doctrine about like Latin America being the backyard of the United States, right? Essentially saying, listen, there's resources to be found here and we're going to exploit them, right?
Yeah,
So, for
imperialism.
example, with Cuba, 100%. So, with Cuba, when they kicked out the United States and said, no, we're going to have all the profits stay in Cuba, for some reason they had an issue with that, right? And then there's this whole like, oh, they're not free, right? It's a matter of freedom. And it's the same thing that the United States said about what happened on 9/11, that they attacked us for our freedom, right? Which we know regardless wasn't true, right? That wasn't the reason they had attacked us in the first place. So the point I'm getting at is when you are looking at a system that is demonized since I don't know how long, but we'll just say since the 50s, since the McCarthy era, we know it to be true, and then we continuously still hear the same talking points in 2020. To me, it sounds like we're willing to forgive exploitation of let's say black people in the United States because it stopped. But it didn't stop, right? Because we're still exploiting people in the 60s, and that was the reason why so many countries, not just in Latin America, but by the French were getting fucked off in Africa. You know what I'm saying? The Dutch were being told to fuck off during the 60s. There was a huge wave of liberatory movements because there was, like you said, a thing called empire and imperialism, right? And a lot of these countries determined self-determination was the way to go. And a lot of imperial powers didn't like that. And it just so happens that they wanted a system in which workers had more control over their workplace, whereas in the United States, you have Starbucks literally closing stores that unionize. So again, freedom is a very amorphous um, term, right?
So, from my understanding, all right, so hold on. Are you a Marxist or a Leninist or fucking? Well, are you a communist? Do you identify as a communist?
Yeah, if I were
Okay.
to throw a
So
label on it, it'd be Trotskyite, because everybody
you're a
loves
Trotskyite, eh?
yeah, people hate Trotsky, but I think it's okay to criticize the Soviet Union. I think it's fine.
So I believe your your solution to a problem is being swung way too far to the extreme. So
You don't believe in democracy
so
in the workplace?
let me hold on. So you think, okay, well, people are being exploited in the workplace. The workers need more say for what they have. And one individual shouldn't be able to control everything. Okay, this isn't right. It should be changed. Communism has one of the better solutions for this. Look, if you look at like the leading player in capitalism, the United States, they've shown tendencies to shut down, like corporations that tend to shut down unions. And you think that the reaction to this is to get a communist society that owns all means of production, all means of any type of business owned by the state.
No, the workers.
But who's the workers? Who represents the workers? How do all the people make the decision? But the thing is, though, you don't understand this. A lot of people have bad ideas, and there kind of needs
100%.
to be, and there needs to be somebody at the top to be like, hey, that's a good idea. Hey, that's a bad idea. And when you don't have somebody at that top that can also be removed if they go insane with power.
That's why you have democracy, right?
Yes, but a lot of the time,
why do we have
but the thing is, though, a lot of the thing is, though,
democracy?
communism is not a democracy. If you're
Why
talking
not?
about socialism, yes, maybe okay. Communism is not a democracy. Communism is
just
often
stateless.
held, yes, but no, it's not stateless. It is no, it's not. It's everything is owned by the state.
definition. No. By
No.
definition.
No. In communism, the state owns the means of production. The state controls
Go to
everything,
Google right
dog.
now. Go to Google right now and look up the definition of communism.
A political theory derived from Karl Marx advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid accordingly to their abilities and skills. So publicly, in any form really ever been used, is referring to the state. Something is publicly owned, the state owns it. Because when the state is meant to represent the public. But the inherent problem with communism is you don't have an effective way to get out the bad actors. And the bad actors can fuck up a lot of shit. Yes, the idea of communism is great. Oh, fuck yeah. But it never works because of humans' inherent flaw of selfishness and greediness. And when a lot of people get in, but no, listen. When a lot of people get into those powerful positions, they take advantage. And when communism is scary because they can get into these positions and they cannot be removed in some cases. But in capitalism, if you have a CEO that goes insane and it gets exposed and people find out about it, the public and the representation they choose through their democracy can actively act on these corporations. Well, what about lobbying? What about
Twitter
this?
right
What
now
about that?
and Musk,
Twitter
and Musk right now.
Well, what do you
vote out? They're going to vote out Musk because he's destroying Twitter right now.
Well, what that would come down to is, let's say you would get a politician that wants the SEC to look into something more. But the thing is, though, if the SEC looks in and they're like, yeah, no, this is a completely legitimate transaction. Well, it's a completely legitimate transaction.
No, but that's not legitimate. What you're saying is the will of the people is reflected by them being able to tell some CEO to get off. But it's
not. But the thing is, though, you have to get out this idea that the people can all just tell somebody to do something. No, the people always choose someone to represent themselves. And yes, you might think that yes, some of the modern day communist states might have a degree of elections. It's because they fucking work. But you look at any communist state, really before the 1980s, 1990s, pushing it. Not a lot of them had the ability to vote people out.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Because again, you're not familiar with the democratic system in Cuba, right?
No, I wasn't. But from my understanding, didn't Fidel Castro serve until he died?
Yeah. So let me ask you.
Yeah, and didn't he die in the 80s?
No.
Yes. Did he? I'm positive.
Yeah, look it up. But he did not die in the 80s.
Well, I'm positive he died with the 80s because he fucking met with Pierre Trudeau, and there's a massive scandal that Justin Trudeau's Pierre Trudeau's fucking is Castro's son.
Castro died like 15, 17 years ago, maybe. Like 2004, maybe.
He died in 2016. So he ruled Cuba until 2016. Did he not?
Well, let me ask you a question. You don't believe in
Fidel Castro was a Cuban revolutionary politician who was the leader of Cuba from 1959 to 2008. And then wasn't it not after 2008? They then decided to get elections because like, hey, this whole communism shit doesn't really work.
Not at all.
No. Oh, yeah. Sure, bro. When did Cuba first start having elections? The Cuba rule of law is an empirical observation regarding elections under the first past. My vote is overrepresented. Okay. From the Cuba law. Representation. The Cuba law was proposed around 1910 to express the conversion of parties' vote shares into its seat share in two-party polarity elections with single-seat districts. Okay. When? So Cuba's first election was 1901. Fidel Castro came in 1956. So that's when the Cuban Revolution happened.
And they like piggybacked off the
Constitution. Yeah, okay, but the Republic of Cuba, where they actually had elections, only exists from 1902 to 1959, and then Fidel Castro controlled Cuba until 2008. There was no fucking elections for the president, dude.
Are you sure?
Positive. And I guarantee you one motherfucker would not end up winning every single goddamn time. Because people get angry. People change. Because if that's the case, why haven't we had one president, one prime minister in any other democratic society for literally 60 years?
Laws. Do you remember FDR was so popular, they literally had to pass a law that said, no, you can't be doing this shit because you're too popular and we think you're socialist and you're too popular?
Yeah, and that's good. Have those rules.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But again, I'm not saying that there isn't democracy, right? I'm saying that there shouldn't be someone in power for as long, and that's regulation. But the point being that there's no democracy in Cuba. Again, it's the same thing with...
But it's not democracy. But the thing is, though, it's not democracy if it's a disguise, dude. Because they're not... Well, this dude isn't fucking winning, man. You like...
Says who?
Statistics!
What statistics? Look up the actual votes for each one of Cuba's elections.
Hold on, let's do something here. What are countries with no voting, no running limits? Some countries don't have speed limits. I don't give a fuck. What the fuck would be what would be the right word for this?
You see, we're moving the goalpost, though, right?
No, I'm not moving the goalpost. I'm proving something here because you're saying, oh, he has elections. He could be the people of Cuba voted him in every single time till he died. And you're saying that what happened in normal democracies is they didn't have regulations. So what I'm Googling here, what I'm looking up here, is to see what countries have no term limits. And then out of those countries that have no term limits, what were the longest running president or prime minister in that country? Because I feel like if we look at a few of those countries, we can see, okay, they might stay in for 10, 20 years, 15 years at a max, but they eventually get voted out. And that's what I'm saying. If you had fair elections, you would see something like that. Because I guarantee you, when you had...
Fair, but there are elections.
Yes, but elections don't matter if they're not fair. It's just like fucking rating. It's like it's
being moved. It's whether or not
it's not being moved. No, it's a democracy. A democracy ensures fair elections. You can't say it's a democracy when their elections are rigged. I'm arguing saying that a democracy is better. And you're saying, well, they have elections. They have elections. Yes, but everyone says that about everywhere. But the beautiful thing is you can prove it. But you can prove it. You can prove it in Cuba that it's more than likely rigged if we had access to the files. You can prove it in America that what didn't happen.
Let me ask you a question. Why don't they have internet access in Cuba?
Don't they have a degree of internet access, but it's not widespread?
Why not?
More than likely because corporations have been barred from working in that country.
Yeah, and they didn't want to run the.
They didn't want because why the fuck would they go
out there?
Yeah, exactly. Why would because you're a company.
So
they have no incentive to go out there.
Well, it's because they've been disincentivized.
Exactly. So.
Yeah, by an embargo. So again, it's like, oh, they don't have access to the.
So, the embargo, I feel, would not have held back Cuba. Is like, yes, it has drastically held back Cuba. I am not denying that. They are still driving cars from the fucking 50s. I understand. Like, they are drastically held back. But there are a few other countries. But there are a few other. There are other countries that also have a socialist state that are not embargoed.
Yeah, like who?
Venezuela for a long time was never embargoed.
Yeah, and it's embargoed now.
Yeah, because now suddenly it doesn't serve an interest to the
So the
American
imperial power.
to the American economic interest. Because any country would do that. Russia would do it, China would do it, United States would do it, the UK did it, the French did it, the Germans did it. Every country fucking does it. But the problem,
Yeah,
but the thing
countries are
is,
allowed to work.
but the thing is, what brings the most good to the most people? Well, I would say the American system, yes, it has caused a lot of shitty things, but it also brought a lot of prosperity and a lot of good to a lot of people. Yes, there are a lot of
The
people.
people in China.
What the fuck did what do you, okay, so China, okay, well, I would say, yeah, the ability, the manufacturer going there, yeah, there was some worker rights violations on their part, and it was and it was probably not ethically or morally correct for corporations to use cheaper labor with fewer worker rights to get cheaper deals to sell consumer products to Americans. Yeah, that was a little bit right, not the best, but after a little while, the price of the wages go up because people demand more.
But people in China are doing better.
And they start to improve themselves, but they're only improving themselves because of the capitalist system.
You sure it's not because
Positive, because China was literally in a slum. China was in a slum. China was in a slum until the economic inclusion zones, were implemented. After Mao was booted out, less extreme politicians came in, kind of brought everything down. Like, okay, this kind of fucking insane, Mao. Bring it, let's chill. You're gone now. Brought in economic inclusion zones. You saw the prosperity across China fucking skyrocket. Under Mao, you saw famine. Under Mao, you saw mismanagement. Under Mao, you saw prosecution of children going after their own parents because their parents said, well, I grew up with something different. I don't really know if I like this guy. And literally being fucking killed in the streets. You're saying Mao improved it. Mao did not improve it.
Tulsa. No, let me ask you a question. When did people die in the streets of Tulsa?
Motherfucker, but the thing is, the problem is in Tulsa, yeah, someone might have died in the street, but there wasn't a system set up for the sole purpose of going after that person for their beliefs. Are you saying the United States has a political system in place that will actively go after people for their beliefs? Because that's what Mao did. Mao went after people for going against the communist system. Are you saying the Americans
in the 60s?
Until Mao fucking goes booted out, dude.
So until the 60s.
It's how the whole idea. It's how China is even now. It's instead of they transferred the worship from Mao to the Chinese state.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Did you ever see video of the state attacking protesters with dogs and clubs because they were exercising their right to free speech?
Hold on, repeat that.
Did you ever see the state attacking peaceful protesters simply for expressing their political beliefs?
Yes, we have. But in the American system, when that happened, you saw more people get angry about it, and eventually 10, 20 years down the road, it get ratified and the problem get addressed. But in a communist system, no, not to the same extent though. Because the communist system, it still exists. It just transferred from being, okay, well, don't worship Mao, like still worship the Chinese state. And if you say anything bad about the Chinese state, we're still gonna fuck you up. Like you're still gonna disappear. You're gonna die, never see your kids again, and you're gonna be defamed among everyone. So the difference is you're trying to say, oh, well, because there are some racist cops, that means it is the same thing.
Racist cops. No, because there was a literal system of Jim Crow that the Nazis utilized as their basis.
Okay.
The Nazis used the American system.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Apartheid.
Okay. Yeah. Because of the inherent racism that was built into America
By the state.
Yes.
By the state.
But does it exist now?
Let me ask you a question.
Does it exist now? No. Answer my question. Does it exist now? To the same?
Does what exists now?
Does
to the same degree? No.
Exactly.
No, not to the same degree.
Does Mao's version, does the worship of Mao where you would be disappeared if you went against the communist state, if you went against Mao, if you said anything else, does that still exist in China? Yeah, because we see yes it does. You will literally be prevented. No. I have been following this Chinese shit for fucking years. When the social credit system was first brought out, guess who it targeted? It targeted people who went against the state. Well, now you can't leave. You can't get a good job. You can't go see your family. You can't go on certain websites. You can't do certain things. You can't access certain banking assets. And then you have people who, let's say you're a Uyghur. Well, fuck, you're getting literally sent off to concentration camps. Let's say you're a Hong Kong protester and you get captured by the Chinese state. Let's say you're getting put over. Let's say you're two Canadian fucking tourists who got locked up by China because Canada arrested an executive of Huawei for espionage. And then they locked up two Canadian tourists, and when they came back to Canada, they were fucking brain dead. And you're telling me that's comparable to the modern day United States?
Wasn't there
what?
Yeah. Listen. So, wasn't there like a Black Lives Matter activist who was arrested for peacefully protesting and put in the back of a van, and then when they got to the police station, magically their spine had snapped? Or wasn't there a Black Lives Matter? So you're saying
the actions of a few corrupt individuals is comparable to an entire system built for oppression?
No. I'm saying that you want to see it as an individual problem.
It is an individual problem because there are not laws. No, because there are not laws. There are not direct restrictions on these things. Because in China, there are fucking laws in it, written in books, that you will be put in jail for. Those are corrupt individuals who are breaking the law and committing crimes in a position of authority, and they should be punished because that is what we do in the democratic system in a free market, which always ends up being a proper democratic system.
Is that what happened in 1992 with Rodney King? No.
Don't go. Okay, no. We can't keep going back because shit changes.
We can't look at our history.
No, let's look at now. We are talking about right now. We are looking at history. But things. Yes. You look at the history. Look at the history. Let me say this before you say this point. Look at the history. Then look how far it has come and how it's changed. China, not so much. America, massive, fucking massive.
Have you ever heard of a country called Colombia?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know that they just elected their first leftist president?
Okay.
Yeah. So when that happened, magically, somehow, they were able to find records that show that there might have been targeted assassinations of labor organizers and environmental organizers in Colombia. And that it was not supported, but perpetrated by the United States. Now, this is
okay. And when was this?
Years ago. This wasn't 70 years ago. This is from the 90s up until recently.
Okay.
Up until recently, where now people are being held responsible for these atrocities only in Colombia because they can't make the United States pay for the... Now, this has happened in Brazil, in Chile, in Nicaragua, in Guatemala, in Bolivia. What did Elon Musk say? We'll coup whoever we want. So again, my point being is that you literally have the United States who utilizes the services of the Chinese and then turn and say they're so corrupt. So why are you doing business with them? Well, because it's good business. So doing business with them doesn't make you a bad person.
I feel like the people that have started that direction, I feel there was definitely like an ethical and moral issue with that. I'm not saying there isn't. I personally wish manufacturing stayed in our countries so we have a stronger economic base. That's my opinion. But 100%. It is what it is, and we gave a bunch of power hungry authoritarian fucks a fuck ton of money. That's the way I see it.
Saudi Arabia?
Oh yeah, any corrupt regime that we have bought resources from, that
Bolsonaro.
And look at how many cruelties that those regimes in power have committed. They're bad, and they're not. And yeah, you could say they're comparable to some of the things the United States did in the past. Most definitely.
The United States assassinate world leaders.
They probably have in the past, dude. Fuck, the CIA is crazy.
No, currently.
I don't fucking know, dude.
That's my point. Is that you don't know. But you're also...
I don't think they are, because I haven't heard of a fucking world leader being assassinated recently. That's pretty big news when it happens. Like, fuck, even when the ex-prime minister of Tokyo got assassinated, that was fucking world news. You would hear.
100%.
You would
I
hear.
agree.
You would hear. There's
Did you hear about when
assassinations.
Maduro? Did you hear about when Maduro had the drone that almost killed him?
No, I did not hear that.
Did you hear about when there was a literal coup of American fishermen who went into Venezuela to try to overthrow the government there?
When was that?
Maybe 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
Yeah, maybe 4 years ago.
Hmm.
Look it up. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy to find out that they're still cooing people all over the planet. It's almost as if imperialism, regardless if it's communist or capitalist, is still occurring to this day.
So no, okay. Well, let's correct you here.
Yeah, please, because I know
So
the specifics of them
Operation,
being
yo, what's
fishermen
up, Jesse? How
wasn't
you
exactly
doing?
true.
So Operation Gideon was an unsuccessful attempt by. Let me go to here. Operation Gideon was an unsuccessful attempt by Venezuelan dissidents and an American private military company, Silver Corp USA, to infiltrate Venezuela by sea and remove Nicolas Maduro from office in Venezuela. The
A
plan.
democratically elected official, yeah.
Now, who is Maduro? That is the question. No, this is a city. I want to see the politician. Maduro. There we go. Very well, thanks. I'm glad to hear that, Jesse. I'm glad to hear that. Beginning
Oh, so
his
you're
working.
looking up whether or not he should be cooed out.
Yeah,
Now we've
I
got,
believe
should he be cooed
I
out?
believe if there is a value, if there is a
That's imperialism.
if there
That's
no,
imperialism.
I do believe if there is a human right atrocity occurring to a degree where.
But people should come into the United States and overthrow our government.
But I don't think. But thing is,
vote.
but it's changed.
No, but during
But
the
it's
60s,
changed.
you would have supported.
But also that
during
was the norm.
60s,
That was
you
the
would have
normal. That
supported-
was. But also back then. Yeah. So.
No, Cuba was literally at the United Nations saying you cannot critique Cuba when you literally have black people that are being put in jail for their political views when we have representation of black people in our government, in our democracy. So there was literal black people voted into positions of power in Cuba before black people were even allowed to share water fountains with white people in the United States. And again, I'm not trying to go all the way back to the 1800s. All I'm saying is, do you think it would have been okay if China, if Russia invaded the United States and kicked out LBJ or Nixon because of the atrocities that were happening to the Americans?
I believe when you end up in the atrocities that were committed, yes, they were bad, but also
do they deserve a coup?
Yes, they were atrocities, but these atrocities were not in an aspect of any genocidal and any systemic way to kill individuals. Yes, there might have been.
Sure?
Yes, there might.
Sure?
Yes, not in law. Not in law. Yes, there might have been local militias who took shit to the extremes, as anything has. What do you think of the notwithstanding clause in Ontario, Jesse? I think that's fucking utter bullshit. Doug Ford is a fucking prick for that, and I'm not even that. I don't really like unions that much.
There is not a law when we should be genociding people in Venezuela.
Yes,
So again,
I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying there is, but I want to say if that exists, then something should happen. I don't know anything about this Venezuela situation, so I have no ability to actively argue it with you. But
do you know
when my general argument, we can argue about specifics and tiny details all fucking night. But at the end of the day, if we look comparably to any free market democratic society, it is often far more prosperous. The standard of living is far more higher. Wages are higher. Ability of people's ability to move throughout the societal hierarchy is vastly easier than in a communist state.
In the United States than in the Canadian system. You can.
I believe in the Canadian. That's a good question. Do I believe you can do it in the Canadian system better or in the American system better? It really depends what you are trying to do. The Canadian system is really far behind in words of, like, let's say tech or software or anything digitally, but we're really solid in like traditional industry. If it comes to like resources, and if it comes to like natural resources, like resource extraction, and if it comes to like really like that's been the high point. We've had like our tech industry is pretty weak. But if you're trying to like let's say trying to make a more traditional company, I believe you can do that really easily in Canada. But we have a fuck ton of red tape for regulation. In the United States, yeah, you can also do it very easily. And if you got the right aggression towards it, yeah, you could probably do really well.
Are you
Sometimes
more free in Canada or the US?
you're technically on paper more free in the US, but I personally feel safer in Canada.
So freedom isn't necessarily
No, it still is a
the
big part. We are still a free state. We are still a very, very free
no, of
country.
course. Yeah.
But we just
the
we
the,
just
con- the
can't do crazy shit like you can in the United States, which is I agree with. Like some of the shit in the states is just like wow. We just look at it, we're like,
yeah,
okay, I'm glad we came
100%.
from
So
the colonies.
sometimes you agree. Sometimes certain freedoms and liberties do need to be curtailed.
Yes, and I believe communism really lacks the ability to get the appropriate freedoms at the time to be given, and often curtail the wrong freedoms at the wrong time. And I do believe there is a fluctuation through how the economy is doing, through how the people are doing, through the civil discourse. A small degree of freedoms can be moved to either gain freedom or slightly restrict freedom. By restrict freedom, I don't mean restrict someone's ability to work, restrict somebody's ability to function in the economy, someone's ability to be a functioning part of someone's society.
Is that
No, because you're not because you're not restricting someone's ability to work. You're simply
Well, you are,
saying
'cause you
no,
can't
you're
just
not
grab
because when a restriction for let's say farmers on crops or let's say fishermen with fish. It's not just a restriction. Oh, you just can't fish. It's hey, you can't fish in this area, but you can fish in this area and this area. You can go back to these other areas in like a year or 2 years. And for farmers, it's like hey, you can grow this crop and this crop. Then you have to you can grow whatever crops for these 2 years. But this year you have to grow canola because you have to bring back the nitrogen in your soil so we don't use so much fertilizer.
That sounds oppressive.
No, it isn't. No, that is not.
canola.
No, that's not oppressive because now you're trying to pull a
I know,
fucking
I'm being
straw man.
sarcastic.
You're pulling a fucking straw man.
no.
Yes, you are. Because now you're saying, oh, well, that's oppressive. No, that's not oppressive. That's the
oppressive. I'm
government.
agreeing with
That's
you.
the
I'm
government
being
taking.
tongue-in-cheek.
That's the government taking the right degree of regulation
Yes.
versus a total
100%.
free for all. Do what the fuck you want because it's been shown. Well, it's good to encourage an environment where people can go do what they want, but at points you need to say, okay, slow down there. You're getting kind of greedy. You're prioritizing your profits over like the well-being of like your surroundings and the community around you.
Like the planet.
Well, not necessarily the planet until recently, but most of the time it's just been locally. Because, like, bro, reducing fertilizer has nothing to do with fucking like the fact that they're pitching it as a climate change thing is fucking retarded. They know nothing about fucking farming, bro. And this is what pissed me off about Canada too. We've reduced our fertilizer usage by over 50% in the last 10 years, and Trudeau wants to say, oh, do another 30, bro. We've already created agricultural revolutions. We're in the fourth agricultural revolution right now.
You'd rather be in the United States?
Fuck no. I love Canada, dude.
Okay, so you can critique.
We pay
a
more. Hold on,
government-
I gotta read these few things here. It's more
Yeah,
expensive
please.
to live in Canada than the U.S. It is more expensive to live in Canada. Yep, that is true. We pay more for insurance than almost anywhere. Yep, we do. Where is a democracy when people can no longer collectively bargain? Where is democracy when people can no longer collectively bargain? Are we talking? I'm assuming Jesse's talking about in the form of the workplace.
Are you asking?
I'm talking. This is what Jesse said here. I'm assuming he or she is talking about collective. Yeah, you're a commie, so
I don't know if it's directed at you or me.
it's direct. Where's
I
democracy?
mean, I could answer it.
I don't know. Jesse, you should clarify. Are you talking to me or fucking other guy here?
You can call me LP, by the way.
LP, where I'll call you LP. And oh my god, it's 12. Dude, I've been streaming for 7 hours. What the fuck?
Get it, boy. Get him.
Get the fuck off, bro. Jesus Christ.
Truly.
An argument with a fucking call me. No. Okay, so
That's
I'm
what we
curious.
do. We
So I'm
comment.
curious. How did you become a communist? What pivoted you? Because I imagine you weren't always a communist. When did it start, and how did you like dive into it?
So going to Colombia, right? Because I'm Colombian. So going to Colombia, I saw that there was a lot of poverty.
Okay.
And I was like, man, that's really fucked up. And I looked into the economic system that they have, and lo and behold, the poverty is occurring under, drumroll please, capitalism, right? So I was like, that's pretty fucked up. Why is it that I never saw this type of
I
poverty? I've seen poverty.
oh, okay.
Sorry, go.
Jesse just responded.
Yeah.
Fuck. We're here, boys. No, Jesse, I agree 100%. It's scary as shit. The fact that I didn't even know that clause was a thing till I saw the news articles about it. That's fucking bullshit. Because already, like, our teachers get paid fuck all. And like the fact that there's like, get back to work because of COVID is kind of fucked up. I don't think that's good. Bullshit. Commies don't love the poor. They hate the rich.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me how I feel. That's fine.
Commie.
I like when people tell me how I feel. That's amazing.
Commies don't love the poor. They hate the rich.
Yeah, no, truly. Again, it's interesting for people to utilize actual facts to draw conclusions, right? You have an actual communist right here in front of you telling you what drew me wasn't my
I really don't believe you're a communist. I believe you're a socialist. I don't believe you're a communist. I believe you're
I believe in a stateless, moneyless, classless society.
That's physically impossible. Will never happen. Money has been a thing since the beginning of society. Never happened.
Well, no.
Never.
I mean,
bargaining does not work at a large collective scale with society.
Existed. No,
yeah, it existed, but it existed when we were fucking trading berries and fucking elk meat, dog. When we weren't having advanced technology to a point where we are now, and currency has existed since the fucking Romans, man. It existed before the Romans. Like civilizations across the world, it's one of the one of the universal things. If you go to like most societies that got pretty far, they had one form to a degree, a currency. If it was, if you're going to the Aztecs, if you're going to the Romans, if you're going to the Egyptians, if you're going to the dynasties in China, like currencies have always existed. And like,
don't you find it interesting that China has a currency?
Can we stop with this meta bullshit?
What do you mean?
That doesn't mean anything, dog.
Well, it does because China is communist, right?
But they weren't communist till like 70 years ago. And they still kept their currency because like you kind of need a market to function, but they just really controlled their market to a point where it wasn't a good incentive for someone to.
Have you ever read the German ideology?
Have I ever No, I don't sit around and just read ideologies. My apologies. I'm in the politics area, but I'm not adept. Yeah, you're allowed to, but I don't do that.
You're
so
allowed
indulge
to have
me.
Your opinion, obviously. No, the point I'm getting at is that like there's actual economics that we're talking about here, right? It's really dry. It's really fucking boring, right? And most people don't read it, which is fine. And most people have really strong opinions about these systems, which is fine. But for me, what's interesting is how people, like, I agree. I'm not going to see a classless, stateless, moneyless society in the next 40 years. I can agree with you that it's kind of like a far distant thing, right? But let me ask you a question. Are you ever going to be as smart as
It was Roman, but yeah. If I would ever be as smart as what?
As Stephen Hawking?
Fuck no.
Do you still strive to be smart?
I mean, I spend a lot of time on YouTube, so I like to say I do, but I really don't. I do.
Okay, well, you like to believe that you want to be smart, right? So the fact that you'll never get as smart as Stephen Hawking doesn't stop you from aiming for a, let's say, more perfect union within yourself, right?
Oh, I'm just dying here, old lad. Oh. Can you please repeat that question? I just fucking, I cough a lot, dog. I don't know what it is.
You're good, brother.
You repeat what you said?
Yeah, so just because you aren't going to be as smart doesn't mean that you don't strive to be a more, perfect human, right?
Yeah.
So the whole communism is good in theory. I agree, it is good in theory. Why wouldn't you want to strive for something that's good in theory instead of something that's bullshit in theory?
Because
something that's dog shit.
Okay, because let's say you have a mathematical equation. It's good in theory. It should work. You go do the experiment. Doesn't work.
Well,
and you do it, and just hold on. And you do that experiment 3 times, Doesn't work. Do it 17
Now,
times.
do you have
Still
someone
doesn't work.
slapping you in the
Still,
back of the head while you do it? Do you have somebody
the thing is,
fucking
though,
with your system while you're doing it?
communism before like the Red Scare had the ability to get to a point of striving, but it never
Which
did.
countries?
Soviet,
countries?
the
The Soviet
Soviet
Union?
yeah, the Soviet Union.
Did the Soviet Union go from being a fucking poor agrarian state to being a world power that was industrialized in a
Yeah,
very short amount of time?
it did, but
Now,
it didn't work.
Through a lot
Yeah,
of oppression,
it was
just the same way the
100%.
United States was.
But thing is, though, the difference was the amount of first of all, the time and the amount of deaths. So the Soviet Union did it very quickly, but millions of people died in a really short time. The Americans, the Americans did it. The Americans did it over like 400, 500 years. And yeah, there was hundreds of thousands, maybe a few million deaths from it all. Right? But you got your Native Americans and you got your African Americans that came in as slaves, and you have all your different ethnic groups that consisted throughout Americas. Yeah, of course. But the death toll was drastically different. I would highly argue that communism as a whole has killed more people than the idea of, because you seem to be arguing on America since that's the most pure form of capitalism. America has since it's ever existed. And even if you just take the main, like one of the main big guys.
How many bombs has the Soviet Union dropped on innocent civilians? How many?
They could say, well, okay, buddy, are you going to say really the nuclear bomb option? Like really? Oh, they shouldn't have dropped the nuclear. They should have. How else were you going to do it? You would have killed millions of more of Japanese. And you would have killed millions of more of Americans. If they would have invaded the Japanese islands, they would have fought tooth and fucking nail, and it would have been much bloodier. Sure? Positive, because when the fucking Japanese surrendered, people were crying. There was such a god complex in the Japanese culture around the Japanese state, where if the Americans invaded and they were fed the same propaganda that the Americans were fed, that the Americans are pigs and they're disgusting and they're gross, and they're coming to take your land and steal your shit.
Sounds like communism scare, right? That sounds basically what we did with communism.
No, that's going. You're defending fascism now, bro. You're defending Japan, which was a fascist state.
Japan. I'm not defending Japan. What I'm saying is we didn't have to drop the bomb,
bro.
And again,
Han said something really good too. Oh no, Han said something too. The fire bombings of Tokyo, the fire bombings of Okinawa. What the fuck was the other? Fuck, it starts with an O, goes to the T-O-Y-K, something like that. I forget what the fuck it was. One of the other bigger cities. We're hit with fire bombs. These killed more than the nuclear bombs did. And the Japanese were like, fuck you, we don't care. And then they were like, then they dropped the bombs, and I don't know if it was the Shogun or the Emperor or whatever, fucking was like, this is literally the most deadly fucking weapon that ever exists, and we continue to fight, it will be the end of all of humanity. Is like a vague requote of fucking what the Emperor said. Because there was a serious consideration of dropping the bomb. They didn't take it lightly. It wasn't, fuck yeah, let's drop the bomb, let's fuck the bomb, yeah, atomic bomb, woo! That wasn't going on. People were like, this is a very serious thing. Do we do this? Is this the right thing to do? But they determined that the boom, yeah, it was going to be a massive loss of civilian life would be better than the overall loss of civilian life from the invasion of Japan.
However, quote, the overwhelming historical evidence from American and Japanese archives indicate that Japan would have surrendered that August, even if atomic bombs
What's the source for this?
Been used. And documents
What's the source for this?
That President Truman and his closest advisors knew it. Now, you could do a really basic ancillary search on Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever you do, but it is kind of widely known that this August date was already known by the Soviets and by the United States.
Okay.
Now, we can argue about the minutia of whether or not they were gonna surrender or not, but the point I'm getting at is that when an atrocity is committed by the United States, it's for the greater good.
I don't think I've ever said that. I said, yes, the capitalism and free market in the United States in general, yes, it has caused bad things. But again, you're missing my point. You're missing my whole point, though. You keep on going back to these like other deals. Oh well, they did this. They did this. What about this?
History,
I'm not. If we look at the modern day living standards of these places and of these people, they are far vaster and way better than most people who came from a communist state. And a lot of people left communist states.
Education rate. What's the education rate in Cuba versus the United States?
I don't fucking know, man, but I know fucking people in Cuba don't have as many access to as many amenities and as many daily goods.
I thought we talked about the embargo already.
Yes, but things they're only embargoed by the fucking United States, dude.
No, bro.
And Israel, I guess.
I don't think you know how the embargo works. I said it earlier. If you dock,
yes, and you have to wait 6 months, but there are still people who are willing to do that because I imagine Cuba will still pay for that.
No. The U.S. will cut ties off from France if they do fucking business with Cuba. Are you kidding, dude? Come on. You know this. You know that the United States dictates terms. That's why the entire planet voted to end the embargo at the United Nations.
Yeah, that was funny.
What was it, yesterday?
Okay, I saw that. I laughed at that.
Apartheid state of Israel, a democracy where they don't let their citizens vote.
Hold on. I'm curious. Let's derail this entire conversation. Who has a better, who has a more historical right to Israel? The Christians, the Jews, or the Muslims? Run.
You're asking me?
Yes.
So how far back you want to go? Because I know you don't like looking at history too far back.
That's up for your interpretation. I look back to history all the time, and that's to like fully to its full extent. No.
Times, and if we
I'm saying if we look at the past, let's look at the past, right? Let's look at the past. A lot of these countries, they weren't that good, and you say, oh, it's because they weren't allowed the ability to strive. They were oftenly bullied and pushed around by the United States.
No, not bullied, like not allowed to trade, like economically suffocated. What's the point of an embargo? To suffocate a government so that it cannot succeed, so you can overthrow it, or so that its government changes, right? So it's literally the Eric Andre meme, where it's Eric Andre shooting Guatemala, Chile, Cuba, Venezuela, and then saying, I can't believe communism did this.
So can I ask, what are your thoughts on, let's look back. So you want to look back. Okay, well, Cuba, great country, right? Oh, they did have elections.
Not a great country. Not great.
Okay, so you are admitting it's not great. Okay.
No, I'm saying that you can say this country isn't necessarily evil, but there's still room to grow.
I never once said they're evil, and I'm not saying this. I'm not saying communism is evil. I'm saying it doesn't work nearly as effectively and as good as capitalism or a free market. And that's what I no. Let's say no. Don't say put it that way. I've been saying that since the beginning of this conversation, that communism does not bring the same standard of living and the same
And I've been telling you that you can say that while there's literally somebody stepping on the other person's foot, right? So if we're going to look at the material conditions of what's actually happening in Cuba, you can say that the outcomes are better in capitalism when I tell you, how come the education rate is better in Cuba than in Colombia when one is capitalist and one is communist? To me, that seems like we're ignoring all the failed states of capitalism and only focusing on the struggling states of communism. Now, again, I'm objective. I'm telling you that it's not okay for Fidel Castro to send gay people to go work in agrarian reform farms or whatever, right? But at the same time, how come they have a better education rate, a higher literacy rate than the United States? Outcome seems better there.
Sorry, I was fixing my LEDs. They're falling off my wall. Why would it be better? Well, in the United States, yeah, maybe there might be a little bit of discrepancy. But if we look at the overall free market and democratic world, the literacy rate, is drastically better. Even if you compare the United States to most other free market and democratic countries, the literacy rate is pretty weird. Like the United States doesn't have that good of an education system. So I me as a Canadian, I fucking hate defending Americans. I hate defending their bullshit system because I don't think it's the best way to do a capitalist society or a free market. I don't think it's the best way to go about it. But when it comes to like, yeah, their literacy rate might not be the same. Well, fuck, man, I don't have an answer for you on that.
Infant mortality rate is
Aren't
better
aren't like
in Cuba.
aren't Cuba doctors like literally quitting their job to go be taxi drivers because it pays more?
No,
Yes, they are.
no, they're not.
Yes, they are. Did you not see any of you haven't seen any of this, hey? How like Cuban doctors are actively quitting their jobs as doctors to go work as cab drivers because it pays more. Because tourists tip a lot more than their job pays in a day.
Let me ask you a question. Are there people in the United States who are quitting their jobs as educators to go work
Yes.
at Walmart?
Yes, because it pays better.
Okay.
But do you
Now,
believe?
my
But
point
thing is though, but
that
thing
it's
is,
a failure of capitalism, but we look at a failure.
no,
of
I
a
don't believe.
couple
I
of
don't believe. I
doctors.
don't believe it's a failure of capitalism because if it was a
But it is
failure
a
of
failure of
no,
communism.
if it was a failure of capitalism, we would see it among every single country that has capitalism.
Colombia?
When you have these.
In Colombia, dude, so many capitalist countries.
Okay,
You know of like
but why
6
do the
capitalist
vast
countries that are
majority
doing
of countries
okay.
that the vast majority of people that become the vast countries that become capitalist end up becoming prosperous? Yeah, you have your
Nope.
few outliners.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. No.
All
It's
of
the
Europe, most of North
inverse
America.
it. All of Europe?
Pretty much
The
most of it,
regu-
besides
funny that
besides
you say
Eastern
that.
Europe, which was under the Soviet Union for a long time and just recently got
Why do
freed.
people say that a lot of Europe is like socialist?
Well, like you have the no, most of Europe isn't.
So pure
In my opinion, of a
capitalism
Canadian,
isn't working that
okay,
well.
no. France, Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, Luxembourg, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany,
Are
Poland.
these imperial powers?
These countries, in my opinion, are doing it pretty good. Sweden and all them, they're pretty socialist. Your Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and Finland, they're pretty socialist. They're pretty far left.
And they're doing pretty good.
Yeah, but so is the rest of Europe.
Interesting.
They're all doing, yeah, but dude,
So it's almost as if you could do both. You could be capitalist and be successful, and you can do socialism and be successful.
yeah, I'm just vouchly against communism. I agree, socialism has its perks. I'm vouchly against communism.
Do you know what comes after communism?
What comes after communism?
Anarchy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's the equivalent of saying we should be more like Jesus. We'll never be like Jesus, right? But would you not want to strive to being a more like perfect person?
Yes, but
Is that
people
not the
aren't.
goal?
But people aren't going and taking. Some are, but the majority of people are not taking the words of the Bible and living it word by word by word by word by word. Most people are just, I have these general philosophies. I'll live by them. I'll strive towards them. When you go to communism,
No, but they're trying to be better.
yes,
right?
but the thing is that when it comes to communism, I don't think it's comparable when it comes to like the idea of like, oh, Jesus, I want to become better, because Jesus and Christianity up until until recently with the secular shit, until like secularism started to become really popular, doesn't really hold much control nowadays
No, it was just
in
an
politics.
example. It was just more of an
But
example of,
communism is
like,
purely a way of
what
governance. It's not a religion, and it's not like striving
Look, you're getting
striving to follow a moral belief versus trying to follow a political system.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying, I was using it as like an analogy. What I'm saying is that just because you have a system that you think is impossible, right, doesn't mean you shouldn't strive towards something closer to that, right? So, for example, if communism is supposedly a moneyless, stateless, classless society, why would we call Cuba communist, right? It's because they have a communist party.
The definition of communism is not a moneyless and stateless society.
Do me a favor. I know you found one definition. I want you to do an aggregation of 5 definitions. It's really easy to do on the internet. You kind of just scroll down Google 5 definitions, and you'll be able to determine overall what's the definition of communism. Just humor me, please. I would love you forever if you did.
Yep, I'll humor you. So here's one. Communism is an economic ideology that that advocates for a classless society in which all property and wealth are communally owned instead of by individuals. Okay, that's by Investopedia. What is the basic idea of communism? It's by Wikipedia. Communism is a far-left socio-political philosophy and economic ideology.
You're doing 2 Wikipedias, right? You're doing
no.
2 Wikipedias.
You have Investopedia. which is a Wikipedia about economics and about investing. I actually use Investopedia all the time for my investment strategy. It's a fucking great resource, by the way. If you ever want to learn how to invest, highly recommend trying the Investopedia practice account, where essentially you get like a figurative amount of money, but you could actually invest on like the real stock market. You could see how you could actually do shit, if shit like you think would actually work out, and how you want to go about your investment strategies. But it's really interesting. But that's being side talk. That's being sidetracked. But so you have Investopedia. Where the fuck did all my definitions go? Oh my god, I just lost everything. There we go. So you have Investopedia, good source. You have Wikipedia, communism. From Latin, communes, common, universal is the far left. I already read all that.
What about Britannica?
And current within a social, and then with current with a socialist movement whose goal is to establish establishment of a communist society, a socio-economic order centered around the common ownership of the means of production, distribution, and wealth. Is that wealth? I finished that without actually checking that.
What about Encyclopedia Britannica?
What is the definition?
Right, what is communism? Communism is a political and economic system that seeks to create a classless society in which the majority of the means of production, such as mines and factories, are owned and controlled by the public. There is no government or private property or currency. Stateless, classless, moneyless society. And again, it's semantics.
So,
but if we're
then, do you not consider Cuba communism? Do you not consider? So you don't commit
socialist country.
Yeah, socialist. Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah. And then the same thing with Venezuela.
For communism.
Yeah, but do you believe that the socialism Cuba has versus the socialism, let's say, Sweden has is different?
Do you think that the U.S. could?
No, answer the question.
Well, I will promise you, I will answer it real quick. Do you think the United States could cause an embargo on these countries that you're talking about in Europe successfully? Do you think they'd be able to put that in practice? Or is it that Cuba is in the United States?
Yes, I do. If it was a Scandinavian province, yeah, I believe they could, because of I really do, because of Germany, France, Netherlands, Belgium, Great Britain, Norway. If they needed a reason to embargo a Scandinavian country back in the day, I imagine it would have happened, because, like you said, they held the cards.
Why didn't they?
Because they didn't see their socialist governments as a threat.
Why? Because they didn't.
Because they don't border them.
Throw out the capitalists.
They don't border them. Yeah, and they don't throw out the capitalists, and also because they are still basically a capitalist society.
How far away is Europe as opposed to how far away is Cuba?
Cuba, from a vague term, from a vague idea,
miles?
I would imagine 90, 100, 200, something like that.
Yeah,
Europe,
like 100 miles? You could go there on a jet ski? Can you go to Europe on a jet ski?
Fuck no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, you know the Monroe Doctrine, right? Basically stating that the United States sees Latin America and the Caribbean as their backyard.
Yeah, and it's and anything that shows up in there is anything that shows up there, or the resources, would either be an asset or be a threat. And honestly,
so when I go around the Titanic and start stealing shit from this person's room, that person's room, that person's room, that person's room, that person's room, and put it all in my room and say, that's funny that I'm doing so well on this boat and all of y'all are living in fucking squalor. It's kind of ironic when you are ignoring most of the material realities that caused that wealth, right? So again, slave labor to build up the infrastructure within the United States, whether it be the black people or the Chinese people, indentured servitude, regardless, right? It was off the back of slavery. And we just proved that to this day, we are still assassinating workers and environmental activists in Latin America. So we live nice, because I know you know about Canada living nice because of Haiti, right? The shit that we've done, or at least Canada has done within Haiti. Imperial powers inherently steal resources to enrich themselves.
We didn't steal much from Haiti. I've heard this before. Haiti, I really wouldn't say that's even like imperial. That was
okay. So I'll give you Haiti 100%. What about Colombia? Why does the United States have such a problem with Colombians determining whether or not they want to have a union?
Because I believe, okay, I feel that's being extreme and that shouldn't be allowed. I agree with you on that. But at the same time, I do believe it is in the U.S.'s best interest for the security of the Panama Canal to ensure that the neighbors of Panama are somewhat in favor.
How do we get the Panama Canal?
Oh, because we fucking just went in there and we said, "Oh, hey, we'll give you a bunch of money and we'll give you some fucking fees
You
for
don't
every ship that
support
goes
what
in."
Russia's doing in Ukraine right now, right?
No, because I believe those were borders that were laid out, and they were
So we
ethnically
respect
different.
sovereignty of countries, right?
Yes,
So you don't just
but thing is though,
go
the
assassinate
Panama Canal
someone
though,
in
I would say the
Cuba.
Panama Canal was extremely beneficial for Panama, definitely nowadays.
For Panama, yeah, because they're a puppet to the United States. But do you think that deal was good for the rest of Latin America for self-determination? No, it enhanced it enriched the
But thing is though,
small
if the
portion.
United States didn't do it, someone would have, because it was an idea not just formed from the United States. This has been an idea formed since the
agree.
beginning
Imperialism.
of the exploitation of the New World. The Panama Canal is not a new idea because it's economically makes sense for any country that's conducting trade. And I especially feel, let's say the United States never became a world power. They stayed isolationist. They never got involved. They never got involved in World War
If Russia
One.
doesn't invade Ukraine, someone's going to invade, right? If we don't invade,
No, but it's completely different because Russia's trying to go in and say this is our land. United States,
just our land, or is there like economic reasons why they're doing it? Right? There's like NATO.
yes, but
there's,
Panama.
like, layers
But the thing is though, Panama isn't United States. It is its own country. And yeah, there might be.
its own country.
Well, Puerto Rico is a part of America technically.
Is it? Do they vote for the president?
No, because they're technically a territory and they're in weird limbo, and
mean
there's
a
an
colony.
ongoing and there's an
You mean a
ongoing
colony.
yeah, fucking colony, man. Like you're getting down to fucking semantics here.
No.
I believe we agree. I believe we agree on a lot of. I believe we agree on a lot of things here. But you keep on coming down. How do you guys feel about BC11? Complete fucking bullshit. Bill C11 honestly is only a thing meant to try to keep the dying media titans of Canada alive. It shouldn't happen. And if our politicians actually gave a fuck about the digital age in Canada, a lot of the stuff in C11 would either be a lot clearer or wouldn't even be in the fucking bill in the first place.
You see Jesse in the chat fucking simping for Cuba? That's kind of crazy.
I believe he's.
And I'm being sarcastic, obviously.
Because it's true.
He's not.
He is being sarcastic.
True.
No, dude, this dude's Albertan, bro. He was supporting the Freedom Convoy. He is a hardcore. He is a hardcore conservative, just like me. No.
I don't know. It's true.
Brazil paid Fidel Castro a lot of money in exchange for Cuban doctors. Interesting.
Yeah. Why did so many doctors come from Cuba to help the United States after Katrina?
Hey, I'm not saying that they don't have good specialists there.
Okay.
But I will stand by what I've said this 4 times now, I think at this point. I disagree with communism. I believe communism in its truest form never works because of humans' inherent nature.
For the 4th time again, the examples you're utilizing are either A, we actively work against them through embargoes, or B, we steal resources from whoever we want in order to enrich ourselves and say, look, we did it all on our own. Don't look at the people being assassinated in Brazil. Don't look at the people being assassinated in Colombia because only China does assassinations. You know the quote that says fascism is imperialism when it comes home?
Fascism is imperialism when it comes home.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the tools used abroad, when those are utilized within the country, that is fascism.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that saying before. Interesting interpolation.
The ability, in other words, I agree. Some of the shit that China does is really fucked up. And also, I think some of the shit the United States does is really fucked up. The difference is that we live in the West. And for some reason,
we live in a society.
We live in a society, dog. Fucking put your fucking seat up after you're pooping. No, dog. Listen, it's really basic shit. Have you ever read any Chomsky?
No, I haven't. I watched a YouTube video about him. That was
Have you
about
ever watched the little documentary called Manufacturing Consent? Basically, the idea that we have freedom of press in the United States is a joke.
Okay, I
right?
think what Max just said is based as fuck. Couldn't communism work if it started in America because America's land is rich and abundant with resources? Change the land, change the game. Base, brother.
Well, no. Wait, is Latin America not rich in resources?
Nah, too much jungle, bro.
Are you joking
I'm
me? Where do we
fucking
get
with you,
all our
man. I'm
batteries?
fucking
No,
with
no,
you, dude.
I know, brother. But like, where do we get all our batteries? All our lithium batteries from
From a
Bolivia,
mixture of
right?
Canadian mines and Bolivian mines. Yep.
Yeah. So when you have literal like psychopaths like Elon Musk saying, "We'll coup whoever we want," that's not just a psycho speaking on his own. It's a policy that's reflected throughout the entirety of American empire. And it didn't stop in the 60s once black people got the right to vote. We just exported our exploitation to Latin America and China. We utilize slave labor from China and then turn around and say China's bad system.
But I believe
If
by
we have
but the reason why we say the bad system isn't because of their ability to tap into the capitalist market and prosper, but it's because of the purposeful, written in
yeah,
law,
yeah.
like not fucking like written in laws that actively go after people in the population that disagree with the government, that go against the government and go against the state. That is the problem. People should have the ability to express themselves and should have the ability to say what they want about their
In
government.
Colombia. In Colombia.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I agree. I believe I've said, I may not have said this, but I do. But what the United States does do in some other countries could be seen as unethical, could be seen as
We
unmoral.
still do imperialism, right?
Yeah, dude, I would say the United States could do a degree of imperialism nowadays. Yes, but I do
Does
believe,
our
but
empire stand on the backs of all the Latin Americans that we need to exploit and all the Chinese people that we need to exploit so that we could have iPhones? Our goods, our standard of living is off the backs of exploited people. So again, there's no difference between China and the United States, except for the fact that they have healthcare there and that there's a social
every system is off the backs
credit
of
system.
every system is off the backs of exploited people. But it's just about how many people. Like really, it comes down to what I think. Like the blunt of it, how many people are exploited and how bad is the exploitation? And I believe the people that are exploited in a communist system and how badly they're exploited is a lot worse in a communist system than that exists in a capitalist system. That's where I believe you're going to have evil in any fucking system you have. No shit. But it's about how
So you
evil
choose
is
to
it.
have a more evil system than a more pure system.
No,
Right?
I believe the communist system is a lot more evil than the
root
American
word of
system.
communism?
Communism, it means collective, it means community. But the
Okay,
thing
and
is
what is
though,
the root word of capitalism?
I believe it comes from the idea of an
Capital.
individual or capital or
Capital.
some bullshit. Yeah. Okay.
So capital is the main
Wealth.
thrust of the economic system
Yep.
in the United States, whereas community is the main thrust of an economic system in, let's say, Cuba. So we're really saying one system. Now, whether or not they actually succeed in those things, of course, is a different discussion, right? But
Yep.
one is aiming for money and the other one's aiming for community. To me, the reason I'm a communist is because I care more about community than I do about capital.
Hey, fair
I
enough.
would rather have a system that goes nice, slow, and steady and doesn't destroy the entire planet. And that extends to the Soviet Union and China and the United States.
Okay. All right.
It was fun, bro. This was a really
It was. I agree.
I think it was less aggressive than I thought you thought it was going to be.
I mean, I think I knew about what to expect there, and you met my expectations and went beyond it a little bit. So I definitely enjoyed this conversation. You opened my eyes to a little bit of things. I hope I can open your eyes to a little bit of things. And yeah, I'm
No,
gonna
I
fucking.
appreciate you letting me hang out.
Oh, of course,
I
man. I
appreciate you
will
letting me onto
happily
your
talk to
platform.
anyone that wants to talk. I will happily talk. I believe.
Well, I'm gonna let you go. I
Alrighty.
know that you need to go to sleep because you've been streaming for 8 hours now.
Oh
But
yeah.
peace and love, brother.
Peace and love, man. You have a good night. I'm gonna fucking rip this hoot and fucking zoot my way. You know. Alrighty, man. You
I'll
have a
do the
good
same,
night.
brother.
It was a pleasure talking to
Peace.
you. You have a good one.
You too,
Bye.
man. Peace.
Remember, guys, always stay civil. You got to do. Be an adult. Have a conversation. I honestly, good conversation. I enjoyed that conversation. Did I agree with everything? No. Did he agree with everything? No. But hey, we had a conversation. That is what you got to do in this world, you know? It's all about love, man. Gotta have a conversation, dude. People forget it. Got a little heated at times, but hey, we worked it out. We figured it out. We heard each other's opinions.